Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Up Close on METV. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, station manager for Manatee Educational Television, and we're very pleased to have with us today, and back again, Paul Firestone. Paul is the author of the Pulitzer Prize plays, a great book and one that I would heartily recommend for everyone, to understand the import of the Pulitzer Prize plays throughout our history. Paul, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for being here to talk a little bit about not only your background, but the import of this book. First of all, to begin with, you tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
Well, I was born on a farm in New Hampshire, and just near Lake Winnipesaukee. But I spent most of my early youth in Manchester, where I went to high school, and then I came down to New York, New York City. I wanted to go to college there, and of course the war came along, but I came back from war, and Columbia is where I went.
So you served in the war?
Yes, I was in for 4 years in the South Pacific. I was there, yes.
What branch of service were you in?
Oh, I was in the Army, and I was in the Signal Corps.
Oh, were you?
Right. When they interviewed me, I said, I speak German very well. And I said, don't you think I should be in the European theater? So they sent me to the South Pacific.
Well, that sounds like the Army.
Well, it was. But it was a very exciting and interesting time. Although I remember, of course, the landings and all that kind of thing. The islands were really very difficult to take. And I was very allergic to a lot of things. And I got jungle rot in both ears, went deaf for about 2 months.
Really?
But anyhow, I survived it all and came back to New York and took my degree at Columbia, and it was in comparative literature, humanities, and with a major focus on the drama, because I was always interested in theater. Even as a boy, I remember even in our barn, we put on plays.
Did you?
I had 4 brothers, and so we put on all kinds of heroic plays.
Oh, good for you.
in the hayloft.
So you were, as a young man, you were kind of quite taken with theater and drama at a very early age.
Yes, it was very early. I think that I may have been around 12 or 13 or 14 when I really started in the theater. And then when we were in Manchester, there were some players groups, community theater, and I was part of their theatrical lineup and did quite a few plays with them. That was really where I started really to get the bug to be in the theater. And then at Columbia, I had wonderful teachers, and they inspired me to do some writing, creative writing, and I wrote a lot of poetry, and I wrote some small parable fables too that I think are interesting. But mostly, of course, I worked toward my master's. I wrote an interesting dissertation, master's page paper on Aeschylus's Prometheus, Prometheus Bound, and got honors for it, by the way. I'll have you know, even though it was in Greek.
I have no doubt.
But then I went. I wanted to teach, and that was my major, and has been my major goal all my life. I remember when I was very young, my father died when I was very young, and it was a tough job growing up in Manchester. But I remember that I wanted more than anything else to be like my teachers, because I really loved them, and so I wanted to be a teacher all my life. And even now, though I'm a playwright and
an author,
to me, teaching is the most important thing. I really feel that if I could encourage people to examine their inner lives and to translate them into dialogue, and I could help them that way, that they could write plays, they could write poems. For instance, a poem is only a reflection of an inner emotion and a thought that goes with it. And I brought some of my poetry.
Well, we'd love to hear some of it. But one of the things I want to talk a little more about your background, because you've spent a good considerable part of your life as an educator, you know, and I think, you know, I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Well, yes.
So when you came from Columbia, which is one of the premier universities, and you got your master's and you're moving on with your life, tell me a little bit about how you went into education.
Okay. When I got my doctorate, I went to Brandeis to teach. I taught in the humanities department and worked with some fabulous people, Ludwig Lewis among them. And while I was there, I fell in love. But I said to this beautiful young woman, you know, there's no fraternization between faculty and students, but we managed to meet each other surreptitiously, and we became engaged, we got married, and I said to her that since I was very poor, she had not selected the best mate, but she said, well, what else could you do besides just being a teacher? And I said, well, I could run a school. And her idea was brilliant. She said, why don't we start our own school?
What a great idea.
And it was. Together, Pearl and I started the New Rochelle Academy, which was a college preparatory day school, co-ed, in New Rochelle. And we began in 1954. And we were together. She was headmistress and I was headmaster. We started in a beautiful setting. We had, I bought an acreage, some acreage, about maybe 7 or 8 acres, with some beautiful buildings on it. It was owned by a banker, and he had died, and his wife had died, and so it was an auction, picked it up. Of course, I was poor, but the chase was very good, and I got some good mortgages on it. Anyhow, to make a long story short, we were tremendously successful.
Oh,
our
wonderful.
classes were 12 to 15 maximum. I picked out my teachers, hand-picked them, and they were wonderfully supportive and communicative people who were very generous with their time and their
The mark of a good teacher, to be very generous with their time.
Absolutely. That's one of the most important things. And to care about the fact that the student's brain is operating and wants to be something. That is, if there is the initiative in a person, then you must to encourage it. Just as, for instance, I went over to Booker High School the other day, and I said, you know, there is a play down at the Banyard Theater that I would like very much to have boys and girls who are seniors come, and I would even pay half their
Underwrite
admission.
a little bit of that, yeah.
But I didn't get a call yet from them, so I'm going to go back there.
Good for you.
But the theater is, to me, and plays are so meaningful because they are really reflections of life. No art is more intensely like life than the theater. It is life, and you see it on the stage, so it's controlled life, and it's life that can be constantly repeated. After all, when you see a Shakespeare play, you know Hamlet, and you know what he's going to do all the way through it, and so you look for nuances in the actor's development of the character.
Yeah. Exactly.
In any event,
well, let me just stop you briefly. So here you are, New Rochelle, with your school, with you and your
that was in New Rochelle, yes,
with your wife, and you're running this wonderful preparatory school, and you're there for a period of time. You have a great staff.
35 years.
35 years.
Yes, until Pearl died, and then I felt I couldn't run it alone myself, so I closed it down, and again I worked in various theater companies as a playwright doctor. That is, people would have plays and I would help them improve them. And then some plays are edited too before we put them on the stage. And so I helped on the editing. I also played many parts, but that was many years ago. I mean, we're talking about the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s.
But this abiding interest, though, in the theater
Oh.
and drama, has been with you since a
It's
young
been the
man.
most nourishing part of my life.
And one of the key things as you progress and the success of not only your school, but your involvement with community theater and community people, kind of resulted in this book. And I want everybody to have a chance to look at this. It's the Pulitzer Prize winner, the first 50 years, 1917 to 1967, A Dramatic Reflections of American Life. And I'm going to hold the book up there so everybody can see it.
Right.
And see.
I'm working now on the next 50 years, the second 50 years, 1967 to 2017. And now this book has 42 plays that I've analyzed, evaluated for their projection of the American scene and the values that we call valuable here in America.
Well, one of the things that I may say that I found really interesting about this book is how you've put those into kind of general genres, categories. And for example, under family life, you have a wide variety. Look Homeward Angel, The Long Day's Journey into Night, The Old Maid, Lulu Bell. All of these are kind of categorized under family life. But then you have a whole other category where we call social protest, political heroes, morality and survival in a materialistic society, and the spiritual connection of mankind. It's a really wonderful how you've taken the first 50 years of the Pulitzer Prize plays and kind of put those into those wide
thematic categories.
It's very interesting. Some of them are very different. They're all very, very different. But at the same time, they fall into that same thing.
They have the same themes. That is, if you looked at your street, in every house, the same thing is going on in every house, that there are contentions, there are absolute, there's harmonies, joys and sorrows, all of them coming into every home. We have our breakfasts, we have our lunches, we have our dinner, so that there's a kind of thematic value to what is family. And the first three plays that I discuss here deal with the young man, the young hero, who wants to get away from a family that is disallowing him to go to college, believe it or not. Every one of these young men who are the heroes of
Look Homeward Angel, Long Day's Journey into Night, and the subject was roses.
Want to go to college,
right.
And their parents are so possessive or ill, that is, in Long Day's Journey into Night, we're dealing with the O'Neills, who had alcoholism in the family, and of course the mother had a drug addiction. So to live with this was a great difficulty. And
I think too, and I think it, as you mentioned that, is that the thing with drama, the thing with the theatrical thing, it deals with the human condition, and the human condition is vast. Sadness, sorrow, joy, hope, all of those things. That's what a play, and a significant play like a Pulitzer Prize winning play, deal with. They deal with the human condition. And I think the categorization of what you've done and the selection of what you've done is really unique to kind of give people a wide perspective on the gamut of the human condition.
Well, when I was the headmaster of New Rochelle Academy, I would see our kids, come in the morning, sometimes in very bad mood, somber, maybe a little bit depressed, and I found out that what was taking place at the breakfast table really was not a pleasant preparation for the day. And when we got the kids, we had to move them into an area of being productive and caring for themselves, etc., and respecting adults. And I said, I'm going to have to take some courses in psychoanalysis to help these young people, but mainly I think I could help some of the parents as well.
Excellent.
And of course I could work with my teachers to make them more effective. And so I went to the Manhattan School for Advanced Psychoanalytical Studies and got all my work done and my own analysis, 400 hours of analysis, because the truth of the matter is that you have to know who you are. Plato said, know thyself, and that was inscribed in the monument over the temple. They had know thyself, and to know yourself is an amazing experience because you see who you are and what your responsibilities are, what your creative potential is, what your failings are that have to be corrected, and your humanity, which is, of course, the most important. But that is, to go out and kill people, as they're doing in the Middle East, there's no humanity, there's no feeling of love between mankind.
And one of the things I think that is really evident here in your book, and the plays that you've selected, is the fact that there's a great feeling of humanity there. There is the human spirit. And I think throughout all of these plays, even some of them from around the turn of the century, there is that deep, abiding thing of humanity up there. And I think that's a wonderful thing for people to be aware of.
Charles, let me just tell you about the Pulitzer Prize plays. In 1917, the first play, Why Marry, was awarded a prize of $1,000. Pulitzer had set this category of plays, novels, journalism.
Correct.
Because he himself was not a very good journalist, although he was a very wealthy and very successful newspaper owner. He had 2 or 3 newspapers. But he felt that he and Hearst, both involved in yellow journalism, really lied and did very bad newspaper coverage.
They did.
But that's why he gave millions of dollars to Columbia to start a school of journalism. And it's out of the school of journalism that the Pulitzer Prizes came as
as a direct result of his support.
Exactly. Now, this library of plays, the first 50 years, contains 42 plays, and they won prizes. And the jurors that voted for them were very intelligent people. They were all either newspaper editors or journalists, or teachers of the drama. And so the selection is excellent. There were, of course, 8 years when there was no award made because there was no play they felt worthy. Now, that's very important to understand that discrimination. Now, the thing is this, that these plays are the picture of America, the portrait of America.
Very much so.
Just as Hamlet or Midsummer Night's Dream or Much Ado About Nothing are portraits of Shakespearean life. And Shakespearean life, of course, is a monarchical life, whereas you'll see in these plays tremendous freedom. The people express themselves without any reservation. There is a marvelous sense of democracy in the Pulitzer Prize plays. And this library of plays, I feel, is not only a valuable, instructive library, but it's a rewarding therapeutically.
And I would suggest to you, if I may, Paul, I would suggest to you that the collection that you've assembled here in this book, one, is not only a reflection of America and its abundance of artistic freedom for playwrights, but it's also a reflection of American life at all levels of American life. And then you get that understanding. And why I think this book, and I'll hold it up again, why I think this book is so important is not just for those interested in theater or drama, but more those who are interested in American life, in the nature of the human spirit. That's why I think these plays really reflect, and I think that it's a wonderful feat to have this book available for people to read. Now, as we move through here, and I want to ask you a few things, because the way you've categorized these is really wonderful. I think you've kind of taken these plays and put them into certain categories, which really kind of highlight, they augment, they enhance each other. So, for example, if you were reading a specific play, for example, under the category of family life, you also have the generation type of play as well. And some of those are They Know What They Wanted, Strange Interlude, Anna Christie, A Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
In each one of those, the need for a baby is the most important factor, driving the motivation for all characters in those plays is they really want to have a baby, and when you say they knew what they wanted, I mean, we have this Italian, and of course they made Most Happy Fella, the musical of it.
Exactly. And I think through here, as you go through, I mean, you look through here, and some of these plays, you know, are so familiar to the public. For example, Death of a Salesman, and some are not so familiar. But I think overall, you have that great conceptual thing of the stream of artistic expression that came through the Pulitzer Prizes. To win a Pulitzer Prize in any category, is a significant achievement.
It's a tremendous achievement.
Whether it's, you know, for journalism or whatever, but, you know, to run that for a play is a significant achievement for every playwright.
It is indeed. That is, it was inspired. Let me tell you that the Pulitzer himself was inspired by Nobel, and because the only culture that has ever given a prize to a play was the Greek culture. Well, the Hebrews didn't believe in having drama. They didn't want representations of that nature. But the Greeks wanted the plays to be done to promote the values of Athenian culture, their mores and their civilization.
Correct.
Because they were a very self-analytical people. That is, if you start analyzing yourself, then you're going to find out that you have to mend your ways and you have to change to adapt your morality to what you feel is the morality that will make you happy. And we all want to be known as good people and want to be respected for our kindness and generosity. The spirit in this book shows the spirit of America is most generous, most kind. For instance, in the plays that deal with economic life, we have Death of a Salesman, which of course is a very depressing kind of play, but we also have How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying.
Which is a wonderful play.
And then we have also one other play, The Tea House of the August Moon.
Which is a wonderful play.
Which is our exportation of business life. That is, what business did they went into business of making that rum or
That's right.
whiskey or whatever it was.
And you know, you look through here, and there's so many wonderful plays that I think, you know, The Diary of Anne Frank, which is, you know, theatrical. You know,
it was the only play. Diary of Anne Frank is the only play that does not deal with an American, but I knew the people who wrote it. In fact, you know, so many of these people were friends of mine, some contemporaries, but the values that she had for her life, Anne had, are the values that we fought for in World War II.
You're exactly right. Those are the values that, you know, that are common to every American. Those are the things that, you know, kind of in perpetuity will always be part of American life.
Right, and also when we see children dying, as we do on the TV today, I mean, that tears at our heart. And we say, well, why do these enemies allow this to happen? Why aren't the children brought to safety?
And you know, and you know, the age-old question for that, and I think, you know, every tragedy kind of is reflected, but you have so many other wonderful plays that are included, and I must say that this, you know, the depth and the analysis that you bring to each one of these plays is very, very well thought out. You know, you examine each play, the significance of its place in history, how those characters develop. So each one of your reviews and or insight into all of these plays is very, very valuable. But I'd like to go through a couple other of the plays, you know, because I mentioned, some are very common to Americans, and they you know, the Streetcar Named Desire, for example.
Yes.
You know, I mean, people know the movie, they know the thing, the Marlon Brando, the Vivian Leigh thing, but the play is like a really significant theatrical piece.
A Streetcar Named Desire is a tremendous play, and even the title is really a metaphor for the imperative need for man to drive for sex. That is, there's movement always, desire is always there, And so Williams is a poetic writer, and his works have all a poetic dimension. And this play is really one of my favorites, too, when it comes to characterization, because he's dealing with a mentally disturbed woman who has realized that she has lost control of her life.
Exactly. Because
of her sexual drive and her sexual experience. And so there's...
And then, you know, the confrontation between the brutish character and the woman who's just barely hanging on to the...
Right. That is the genteel quality that Blanche wants for love is not really for what she wants. She wants to have a tiger in her life. But
it happens.
Anyhow.
But I want to talk a little bit, if I may. I want to talk about, you know, the development of this book. Obviously, the research and the focus and the depth of things that put in this book is. Tell us a little bit about the process itself of developing the Pulitzer Prize plays.
Well, first of all, finding when I had to write a thesis, a dissertation, and I said, well, I wanted to be on the drama, and I said, what is the most important focus for me in drama? And I said, it is the Pulitzer Prize plays. Or it could have been all the Tonys, but I said, but there's something about the Pulitzer where there's intelligence. It's not just popularity on the stage.
Very much so.
You got big belly laughs, that kind of thing. This was, I felt, analytically, the best way to see America and its reflection of its life. And I felt that I would like very much to be able to capture that image of American life, whether it's Abraham Lincoln in Illinois, or whether it's There Shall Be No Night in Norway, where women or American heroines is trying to preserve democracy against the Nazis. I mean, there are so many great characters in this. But so
So as the process began, and you were reading these plays, and you know, all of a sudden, you know, well, not all of a sudden, I'm sure, but you saw this as a really strong tapestry of which all of these plays reflected not only, you know, the human condition, but also part of American life.
My mentor at Columbia thought it was a wonderful idea, and so it took me about 5 or 6 years to write it. When I finished it, I got a high honors for it, but a publisher said, it's too academia, you have to rewrite it. And so I did rewrite it for a popular audience. And so a lot of the academic references have been taken out, and I hope that it becomes an easy read. I hope it becomes more than just an easy read. I hope it becomes a read that will help us mirror ourselves to ourselves, that we see ourselves in some of the characters. In fact, one of my big ambitions is to start a reading theater of the Pulitzer Prize plays. These plays, many of them are now in public domain, and I think that if we had a theater, or if there were some way that we could put on tape for
some of these readings.
Yes, with great actors, and read the plays and then have a discussion to follow. It would have not only great dramatic and values, but it would also have lots of educational value.
Yeah, and I think, you know, and you've spoken, you know, quite frequently about the opportunity to be able to do this. And as we've talked about, all these plays are a reflection of the human spirit. And to be able to hear those words, we're not talking about full-fledged productions, but many places, you know, throughout the country have reading theaters where, you know, people, very talented people, will read the plays with an introduction before and kind of a discussion afterwards. And I think that that's a very good opportunity for people not only to understand the plays, but also to understand the significance of the play itself. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity for this community to look into, and hopefully we can work with you on that. But we're kind of winding down a little bit, and I want to kind of move on to some of the many other things that you've been involved with. Now, you've also, been not only involved in theater, but you've also been very, very involved with being a critic as well. And most recently, you reviewed a play which was done by the Banyan Theater.
Well, as a play doctor in Manhattan, I would evaluate a play and I'd say, this is very interesting to me, but I think this should be cut, and I think you should put something in here that answers the question that is psychologically demanding. And so I'm naturally a critic, but I'm a positive critic, and I want very much never to be damning or unkind or unfair.
I think that's the mark of a good critic as well, is to understand not only the strength, but also to understand the weaknesses of a play. Because a play is very fleeting. It's that moment in time that someone gets to see it. And performances are just as
exactly.
important.
There's some wonderful actors and actresses around here. Yeah. And the Sty of the Blind Pig is a wonderful play to see from every vantage point, from the actor's point of view, but also from the narrative itself about, it's like a Greek tragedy to begin with. The hero is a blind man, poverty, street singer, beggar, and homeless, and how low can you get?
That's pretty desperate. But one of the things that you've seen, and I'd like to just read, if I may, just a little excerpt from one of your reviews here, or the review that you did. This to me kind of summarizes not only your ability as a writer, but also the insight that you bring. So let me just read a little bit about this. Thanks to the masterful direction, let me start here. Great art, like The Sty of the Blind Pig, induces intense feelings, profound thoughts, and compassionate realizations. This is a rare occurrence in the crush of today's media. Dean's play is a poetic, epic drama of promise that great changes are to come in the black man and woman's tomorrow. I mean, I thought that paragraph there, aside from the entire review, really kind of encapsulates and underlines what this play is about. And I think you're obviously the writing that you bring to your book as well as to your reviews is very thoughtful, involved, and to a measure informed. And I think that's the key thing for any writer to have.
Well, I think that the writer, the playwright, really went into his bare naked soul to write these characters that are in this, because they're not Missy, from Gone with the Wind and all that stuff.
Exactly.
These are people who are depressed, angry,
alone, scared,
alone,
all of that.
Very much. In fact, they are so against each other, although they should be loving each other, but they're not because of the difficulty of their lives. The stress of economics, of societal pressures, and disease and health, all that. But I'd like to say that reading theater, reading plays, and seeing a play in depth does help one, as I said, discover oneself. And I would say, I would like very much, if I could, to read just
why don't you read an excerpt here if you
Here's
may.
a sonnet I wrote.
Well, and I think you brought several of your pieces of work that you've. Please go ahead and read the sonnet. And what is this called?
Of a Writer's Despair.
All right, well, let's hear an example.
Does nothing matter? Were all the lonely hours misspent in vain? Have I imagined value where there is none? Was this some foolish fancy, an egotistical distortion like a dream? I have no concept of the force that urged me on to write the things I wrote when at 18 I wrote a Maori's fable. And now at 88 am I to think that all the words I wrote are merely babble? Shadows of the consciousness, imagined imagined lightning flashes in a darkling forest night, silent, without rumble, without meaning. Shall I surrender to the silence now, my lips to seal, my head in failure bow?
Oh, wonderful to share that with us. Now, a lot of your work that you've done, again, really reflects that kind of thoughtful, informed, passionate self that kind of reflects in a lot of these
Well, thank
things.
you very much, Charles.
And I think it's very important for people, not only for you. Writing is a very lonely art. It's a very disciplined type of thing that you do in solitude for the most part. And measuring that kind of involvement is very difficult. Because you have that. It's not a collaborative type of thing. Writing. It's very singular.
But playwriting is a collaborative thing. That is, in a company of players, as for instance Shakespeare too. They say Shakespeare didn't write it. Of course he wrote it. But the company he was in were all mature men, and they were very, very insightful. And they would give him ideas, and he would put them in, he would incorporate them into the texts. That's why there are so many quartos, because he was correcting himself all the time. Now, to me, it seems that today, in a player's company, that there should be the most important person should be a playwright doctor, or they have dramaturge. That's what they call them.
That's the fancy name for it.
Yes, but it's really a playwright doctor. He comes in and he says, this doesn't sound right, or this does not reflect the person you're talking about. He would never say these words, or whatever. That is, in this play we have it with the blacks, there's not one bad word. But the dialogue is so bitter and so terse and so tense as well that that the writer going through that struggled with pain, and he was the blind man. He is the blind man, and he says, "Look, I look around me, and everyone is black."
And that's a great thing from the play, and that's from the play that you just talked about. Now, we're kind of running down on time a little bit, Paul, and I want to spend a few moments with you about, the significance not only of your book, but where you think, for our community, what would you like to do as a bigger picture to try to get some of this information out and to involve people that may have a passion for the theater, for the written word, to become involved. What would you like to see?
Well, first of all, I'm an Actors Equity. I'm a member of it for 40 years. But I would like very much, first of all, to have actors who are interested in being in a reading theater, say the Pulitzer Prize reading theater, to get in contact with me, or even maybe with this station, and tell them about themselves, and I would like to meet them. I think if we could get a retinue, if we could get a group of men and women of, say, maybe 24, who would be of various ages, I think we would have the wherewithal to. After all, there are only about, say, in some of these plays, there are only 5 or 6 characters, but we would be able to do the readings, and I think that they should be paid. I spoke with Actors Equity, and these actors who do readings get $100 for a performance.
But I think the overriding thing here is create that, which makes it really unique. To hear those words, kind of, performed and have them resonate with people, I think would be a really unique thing for this community, for any community actually, because these plays have, as you mentioned earlier, a significant impact on the human condition, on the human spirit, and to hear those words kind of resonate with people as one reads any one of the plays is truly a kind of a wonderful moment in time.
A discussion period about the play's values would be imperative. I mean, just to write it for to read it for entertainment value, no. I'm not talking about making a classroom of it, but I'm saying that people should be able to express what they derived from the play Was there any meaning to their own lives? Did they learn anything about resolving issues, the conflicts that we find in everyday life?
Or, what did they find of that they can examine within their own life? And I think that's a wonderful thing. Now, Paul, we only have a couple of minutes left, and so I want to give you a moment. As a writer, as an author, as an educator, as an individual who has a deep and abiding love and affection for the theater, what do you think, would you like for people to know about the importance of the theater, and especially of these Pulitzer Prize-winning plays? What would that one or those several key elements be?
Well, if a person were to read these plays, as I've synopsized in this book, and then consider the theme as it applies to his own development or to this point. Look, even at 90 you can change, or you can have new visions of
exactly
what you would like to do with your life. Here I am in Sarasota, and I'm thinking of starting this theater. But I can't do it alone. We need young people, and that's the most important thing. I would love to have young people who would come along, and they would be inspirational to the development of a great resource and a great festival here in Sarasota that would attract national attention. I would say there is no a community at all that has thought about doing the readings of the Pulitzer Prize plays. And when I compare, say, that kind of theater with what goes on at Stratford and Avon, or up in Stratford, Canada, where Shakespeare's 37 plays are constantly revived in repertory.
Exactly.
These plays, done simply for the values that they are, that is reflecting democracy, the integrity of American patriotism.
The triumph of the human spirit.
Exactly.
Those are the kind of key things. And I must tell you, to have that vision, for to share that. And I think what you've created here in this kind of anthology of the Pulitzer Prize plays is kind of a legacy. The plays will always be a part of culture, but what you've created is kind of this legacy of the import of how these plays really reflect not only on the individual spirit, but on the collective spirit of this country, of this community.
That's really great praise from you. Right. That's great praise, and I'm truly appreciative.
Well, I want to thank you, first of all, for taking the time out. You've done a tremendous lot of things. You're actively involved. You're working on your second book, which is the next 50 years of the Pulitzer Prize plays, because this goes from 1917 through 1967, and you're at work on your second book, which is going to reflect this. You're involved in trying to help develop a reader's theater, so you're a very active gentleman, and you continue to write, you continue to do parables. I'd like for you to end, if I may, if I could ask for you. You did kind of another sonnet, and if you could end with reading that sonnet.
Okay, let me see if I...
How about that sonnet to America?
Or
whichever one you'd like to. Ode to America.
I wrote this Ode to America because I said, when I sing the national anthem, first of all, I can never go up to the high notes. And I saw it, I heard it at the inauguration, and I thought that it's bombs bursting in air, and I said, oh God, do we have to have bombs around here with America? So I said, that's not what America is.
Right.
And
well,
it's not America the Beautiful or America the prairies. Ode to America. With open gates, the United States invites those yearning to be free, welcoming the world. Our flag unfurled, the stars and stripes spell liberty. The Bill of Rights makes very clear those principles that we revere. We hold these truths self-evident. Our Constitution guarantees pursuit of happiness for each and freedom of assembly and speech, electing those to lead the way who serve with honor every day, to guard the democratic rights of men of every creed and race, preserving our United States. Our flag, once 13 stripes and stars, shows 50 stars for 50 states. Long may that banner proudly wave o'er the peaceful land of the strong and brave.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for sharing that. And we want to encourage you to continue your efforts on the Readers Theater, because I think that's really an important asset, and it could be so fascinating for this community to see that, and for you to share your insight into these significant plays that are really a part of American history. You really are kind of a Renaissance man. You're involved in so many different things, and you still have the active and in the imagination and the desire to continue to try to do things.
You.
And I want to thank you. We'll invite you to come back, perhaps, as you see how we're developing.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I'd love to come back again.
Right, and thank you so much for sharing this. The book is the Pulitzer Prize Plays by Paul Firestone. So I'm going to hold that book out so everybody can see that. And that book is still available from like Amazon, or they can find that.
Yes, you can. One of my friends bought it for 3 cents plus postage.
Well, then it's a bargain. It's a bargain at any price.
Right.
Paul, thank you again for joining us, and thank you for joining us on this special edition of Up Close on METV.